I actually look at the end of each month and say, okay, how fun was this month? How much did you enjoy what you're doing?
That is Mary Kate Scott, a McKinsey alum who's been running her own boutique healthcare consulting firm, Scott & Company, since 2002. MK has been a close friend and a mentor of mine for years, and it was a real pleasure having her as a guest on the show. We cover a wide range of topics, including 3 things MK does for every proposal, including her 5-factor rule, the 3 phases that her consulting practice has been through over the past 17 years, maintaining relationships with the clients MK has served over time, and how MK works with her longtime executive assistant, and MK's end-of-the-year self-assessment process. Those are just a few of the items that we cover. So to learn more about MK, you can visit her firm's website, marykatescott.com. A link is in the show notes. And I hope you'll consider signing up for the weekly Unleashed email. I will send you the transcript of each episode, book recommendations, and consulting tips. Visit umbrex.com and click on Unleashed. Mary Kate, it is great to have you on the show.
Will, it's really good to be here. And feel free to call me MK. We've known each other a long time.
Okay. All right, MK. You gave some training to an Umbrex event where you talked about 3 things that you do with every proposal. Talk to me about that. What are the 3 things?
Okay, so the first thing is, how much time are you going to spend on a proposal? And sometimes you can spend a lot or a little, but my quick check is, for roughly every $10,000 in fees, you should spend about 2 hours on the proposal. Now, you can vary that a little bit, but it just helps you really think about what's it going to take to win this business. Other thing I really do is, this is the gut check. So the first one might be, what's the math? But the second one is gut check. Do you really want this work? And then the third thing I do is much more deliberate, which says, why do you want this work? And I assess it against 5 different things. 1, is the work itself interesting and challenging? 2, are you going to work with great people? 3, what's the working environment going to be like? Are you going to be working 70-hour weeks? Are you going to be traveling every week? Are you working remotely? 4, are the rewards worth it? And 5, is it going to really build your business? And ideally, you get all 5, but, I'm a little dark Irish, and I think I can live with about 4 out of 5 these days. So that's how I think about proposals.
How did you come up with that 5-factor rule, MK? Were there some, I can imagine there's been some scars. Have you been some projects that you did not hit those, and once you got into it, you realized that you probably should have said no?
A long time ago, I did do a couple of projects. It was much earlier in the consulting business. And at the end of it, I'd say, why am I doing this work? And that's when I realized I needed to assess each project for 2 things. 1, to figure out if I should propose on it. But 2, I mentioned I get 4 out of 5 things. Let's say one of those things that I'm not going to get, that I don't like so much, is the working environment. It means I'm going to travel every week, for example. I always actually jot these down, because when I am traveling every week, I go back and say, hey, you knew you were signing up for this. So don't whine to yourself. You knew what you were getting into. And I just find as you assess each proposal, you get smarter and better at doing it.
I think it's so easy when you don't have a project, on the horizon, and there's not much in your pipeline, to sort of say yes to anything, and forget about the opportunity costs of other things that might come up that you're now going to miss. And to think about on each project, like, not just in the near term, am I going to get paid for it? But what am I going to learn from it? Am I going to be gaining skills from this? Am I going to be gaining relationships from it? So I like your 5-factor criteria, and get at least 4 out of 5. And if it's only 2 or 3 out of 5, really give it some second thoughts.
Yeah, really think twice. There's so much great work out there, and so many interesting projects and great people that are well rewarded, that will build your business. They're out there. Just believe in that.
MK, you have been doing independent consulting for far longer than I have, and you're one of the people that I've learned a lot from and mentored me and given me a ton of advice. And you've been doing this long enough that you explained to me once that you felt that your business had gone through really kind of 3 phases. Could you talk about that and about the phases that your practice has gone through?
Sure. So I started, Will, in 2002, which now feels like forever ago. And in that really early phase, so it was so long ago, just as context, there was no LinkedIn. Okay, sure, there was Google, but it wasn't nearly the Google we now have. So my business was really traditional. I had an office. I hired employees. As you know, I worked at McKinsey for 7 years. Some of my first clients came from McKinsey. They referred people to me. Yeah, it's like you never leave the firm. But it was very traditional. I also had a much broader focus, so not just healthcare, which I do now, but I actually worked for Google a long time ago. I had energy clients, healthcare clients. So it was a broad focus, and it was West Coast focused. So that was really traditional. And then somewhere around 2006, as the marketplace changed and there were many more folks like us and people willing to be subcontractors, that was really my phase 2. So I created a team of subcontractors. I do remember the day when I looked around my office and I thought, all I'm doing is bringing in work and I don't get to actually do it. And for me, it's what I really love to do. I really do love to solve the problem, spend time with a client, dig into the facts. So that was really the reason for the shift to phase 2. And I have a great team of subcontractors. And it was focused more in one way because it was healthcare, although it was pretty broad healthcare. It was payers, device, pharma, health systems, but it was also more national. And I did much more traditional marketing because it was a national business. So I wrote books and white papers and was a speaker on many topics. And then I shifted again in about 2010, still with a subcontractor model, but geographically broader. So my business is now very much global. My clients are global, and they look to me to bridge the Europe and U.S. and now Asia aspects of their business. And in another way, it's more focused. It's really 2 practices. One is pharma clients. The other is large not-for-profit foundations that are focused on healthcare, like Gates Foundation, California Healthcare Foundation. So, the thing is, I've really grown with my clients. I've had some clients since, I guess, 2004 and 5, really from the very beginning. And my clients are grown. So now they no longer run one brand or a portfolio. They run a $5-6 billion business. And so I've been lucky enough to actually grow with those clients. So in some ways, broader because it's global. In some ways, narrower because it's more focused on aspects of healthcare.
So having done this a long time, how have you kind of maintained those relationships with those individual executives over time, particularly outside of the context of client engagement? So when you're on one client engagement, it can kind of suck up all your time. How do you kind of stay in touch with the other folks that you've served so that they, keep calling you back for help over a period of 14 years?
Yeah, so some of it's deliberate and some of it's serendipity. But as I said, I have really 3 or 4 pharma clients. So it's not that many, but I have very deep relationships. So I work across their payer groups, their marketing, their medical groups, and different parts of their business. So I do have a Google alert on their business, so I do know what is in the news. I am old-fashioned enough that I still have a paper subscription to the Wall Street Journal. I do have electronic for everything else, but I love the serendipity of reading that newspaper and thinking, this is going to be interesting, and sending someone an article. And I might not do that very often, maybe once every few months, but sometimes that's all that's needed, just to say, I'm here, and how are things going? I also think about what city I'm in and who I want to catch up with in that city. I have a terrific assistant, and it's one of her jobs to always say, okay, in the database, this person, and that's just a great reminder as well.
That's fantastic. Tell me a little bit about how you work with your assistant. I talk to a lot of independent consultants who are looking to find an executive assistant. Tell me about some of the things that you have your assistant do for you.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about her first. And here's my first recommendation. Hire a military spouse. First of all, they can pack up a house in a heartbeat. They're incredibly resilient, resourceful, and they have a hard time finding work. So you can get someone who's absolutely brilliant, highly educated, and really just wants to be able to work. And if she has to move, it's okay. So my assistant used to live in Colorado. She then lived in Germany. She lived in the UK. She now lives in Boston. I'm lucky if I see her once a year in person, but we turn on video a lot, and I speak to her probably once a week and email her multiple times a day. So that's something quirky. But one of the things she is incredibly talented, and what she wants is part-time work. And so I think there's a lot of value to find someone who's exactly the right fit and think about what can you flex so you get this great person. So what does she do for me? She runs the office in sense of she does client work and runs the office. So the office, which is everything from schedule and travel and all the formatting of every document, I'll call that running the office. And then client work, I do a lot of workshops and international meetings, and she does all of my logistics. She speaks 3 languages. Again, go military spouses. And a lot of those logistics involve being present with clients. And the other aspect she does is a ton of internet research. So she understands a lot about the clients and the projects and what I'm actually working on. So I can say, oh, I just found this out. Can you find information about a particular competitor or their actions in this marketplace? She's pretty sharp on search.
So that kind of gets even into sort of associate type of work. We're now recording this interview here in December. We'll probably publish it in January. Tell me a little bit about your process here in December for doing a year-end review, and what are some of the things you're going to be doing in January?
Sure. So what I like to do in December is wrap up the year and really assess what I've done this year. And I have 5 questions that I ask myself, and not super deep, but I look and say, what worked? So what did I do this year that worked? And I can give you some examples of these. The second thing is, what did I do differently, and how did that turn out? If we're not challenging ourselves and stretching ourselves in new, different ways, I think the consulting business is almost going to get away from us. My third question is, what was the most fun part of my year? And obviously I'm asking myself that so I can keep finding more fun. 4 is, what did I learn this year? And maybe I learned something about my business, myself, maybe about my clients. Maybe I learned a whole new topic or a theme. And the last thing is, did I meet my goals? Because in January, I will set some goals. So what I do is I use December for the assessment. And then I truly believe that just because I'm not working on a problem, my brain is still working on it for me, which is great. So I can put that to one side and say, brain, just keep busy on that. And when I come back to the office in January, I know that somehow it will have percolated through, and then I can sit down and set some goals in January. So I don't know what my goals are going to be in January, but that's what I'll be doing, I suppose, when this airs in January.
Can you tell us a little bit about kind of how that goal setting process works? Maybe kind of hark back to January 2018. Do you have different kind of categories for goals, or are they like numerical or qualitative? Tell us a little bit about that process of goal setting.
Yeah, so I usually have a goal around clients that I really want to serve. So maybe there's a target client out there that I haven't served. So I've often got a particular client that I'd really like to work with on a particular project. So it's kind of a content goal. I do have a number goal. I look at the total profitability of the firm, and I look at total revenues, and then total that comes to me. Yeah, I do have the number goal. I have a fun quotient. It's not super numerical, but I actually look at the end of each month and say, okay, how fun was this month? How much did you enjoy what you're doing? And then I don't think too deeply about it. And then at the end of the year, I say, okay, so of these 12 months, when were you having a good time and why? And does that help you set this sort of next fun goal? So those are the three areas that I look at.
And what were some of the fun highlights of 2018?
Personal fun, I'll start off with. I did this river cruise to the south of France where it was all about food and wine. And I actually arranged this trip for 8 people in under 24 hours. And that was fun too. So my husband had a double knee replacement and decided that I would take care of him at home. And when he was home for 2 days, heavily drugged, said, "Oh, I love you so much. What can I do for you to say thank you?" To which I said, "Let's book a trip." So I chose this trip, this river cruise, and he said, "Call our friends." And I had everyone make a decision in 24 hours or less because we got a really good deal because it was the end of the fiscal year for this cruise company. So that was pretty fun. Summering in Maine is also very fun. I would say work-wise, I've created a new workshop for clients that has just had some great receptivity about really predicting where the marketplace is going to go and how competitors are going to act. And therefore, what does it mean for their business and how can they refine their strategies and their implementation? And that was really fun because I think clients got engaged in a really new and different way. And it was great that they reported such insights from it. So that was fun. I've also been working with the Gates Foundation, and it was really fun for me because I'm thinking about predicting healthcare in a particular area in Africa in 2030. And Will, I don't know if you know, I grew up in South Africa. And so growing up in the 70s in South Africa, pre the sort of new era of Africa, and now looking at it, it was just really exhilarating to see how far the healthcare has come in Africa, to think about what the Gates Foundation can really do in this particular area. So that was fun. And I guess another example is I worked with a very interesting group called Health Tech for Medicaid. People don't realize that we have 80 million people on Medicaid. It's probably our largest insured population in the country. And yet they don't get the latest healthcare technology. And this is a group of CEOs who run companies with very innovative technology, and they wanted to reach that Medicaid market. So that was just a project that was exciting to work with 30 CEOs that are really reinventing healthcare and want to bring it to that marketplace.
You mentioned that you developed a workshop. Is that something that a client asked you to develop and then you built it? Or did you have this idea of like, oh, let me come up with this workshop and then kind of go and offer it and sort of shop it around? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so it's a particular class of drugs, the therapeutic area. And the client's question was, we should be leading this market, but we should be growing this market. And where do we think this particular therapeutic area will go? So what they really wanted to know was, what's it all going to look like 3 years from now? And if we knew that, what should our plans be right now? And they didn't say how to do this. They just said, that's what we want to know. And that's a really big and difficult question. And my point to them was, you want to bring your team along with these insights. You don't want us to go away as a team and create insights and present back to you. Let's create a series of workshops where we explore your brand and what's working. Let's explore where the marketplace is going. And let's look at different aspects to sort of create this, what does it look like in 2022? And so it was a series of workshops, and that's how that came about.
Now, tell me a little bit about the efforts that you've done to raise your visibility. You mentioned earlier that you'd written some books. And if I recall correctly, a few years ago, you told me that you had written a kind of how-to guide, I think, on kind of the Minute Clinic type thing. And then actually that resulted in some work. I'd love to hear about your kind of, writing and how that perhaps is translated into project work.
Sure. So retail clinics started in about 2005, and there were maybe a handful of them. And it was actually one of my not-for-profit clients that said, do you think that we could serve the Medicaid market in this way? And should we understand this better and bring it to FQHCs, which are safety net clinics? And I wrote a report on it, and it got quite a lot of attention. And so I translated that into being a national speaker on the topic. So it was new enough that there weren't that many people that could bring insight, but I was also coming at it not as one of the retail clinic providers, one of the companies, if you will, marketing a company, but really explaining it to different groups, whether that would be explaining it to pharma or the National Association of Chain Drug, so explaining it to the CVSs of the world, or working with, say, the Krogers and Publix and the grocers, and should they enter. So I think it's really important to think, okay, what's new, number one, that really people need to understand, companies need to understand. Really start thinking about the audience. What do they want? And start with the speech and see where the questions come. What is it people really want to know more about? And then I translated that into short white papers and then several books. And one book was written for the healthcare provider system, so hospitals and people that provide primary care and specialty care. One was for drugstores and grocery stores, because there's very different strategic reasons for those two entities to go into retail clinics. You had a great speaker on this podcast, I think a week or two ago, about how to write a book. And I really like one of the pieces, which is who's going to read it and why? And have that front and center. Why are they reading it? What question do they most want answered?
Yeah, thanks for the shout out. That was Robin Colucci, and I think that was episode 116.
Yeah. Yeah, Robin. Robin was terrific. Sometimes I don't binge watch these. I guess I listen. I binge listen, I guess, to these podcasts, and sometimes I forget who's who.
Everybody should binge listen to what is your morning routine?
So I meditate, I do some exercise, and I do a puzzle. And I'm not particularly good at meditating, and I've decided to let myself off the hook a little bit. And I say, if I can get through 5 minutes, yay me. And I used to think you're supposed to meditate before coffee, and that never worked. So it's really coffee, meditate. I do a different kind of exercise every day, like a yoga, Pilates, the cardio. One of my favorites is a YouTube fitness guru, Lucy, and I call it Do My Lucy. But then I do a puzzle every morning. I always think that it's like the warm-up for the brain, right? What I bring to work every day is the brain, is my ability to solve problems. And so, most days I do a crossword. If I don't have quite enough time, I'll do a more complex Sudoku or any kind of puzzle. Sometimes I'll just do the jumble, whatever's there. But I think these puzzles really teach you a lot, and they give me great reminders during the day on problem solving.
MK, tell me about the puzzles, and what do crossword puzzles teach you? How does it help you start your day?
Okay, so first of all, it tells me question my assumption. All right, today's crossword, I just realized, the clue was uniform color. So I thought it meant color, that's all the same. So I was trying to think about words, same color, same color. And then I got a little clue, V, and I realized, no, it means a uniform color like a military uniform. Answer, olive. Another thing it teaches me, what do I actually know is true, right? Because it could have been olive, but it could have been other things. So that was something I have to, not necessarily a data point. So what do you know is true? So for example, if there's a clue, Provo's state, it has to be Utah. Today it was, the safety elevator inventor. It has to be Otis. So then you say to yourself, okay, what do I actually know is true versus what do I think is true? And I think that questioning assumptions is so important. We have so many, it's so easy to think it's a dogma, right? I just believe it to be true. But having that ability to question is really important. I like the other one, which is, okay, just start somewhere. You don't have to start at number 1, just start somewhere. And number 4, just keep going. And I think the other thing is, even a small clue of one letter can help. So find the small clue. And my last one is, you really don't need to know everything. So there was one clue, Athleta's son, and some reference to Greek. I don't know. I didn't know it. I don't need to, because I could fill in the information from the other words and the other angles. So I just feel it gets your brain going to just do a puzzle a day.
So that's how you get started. I love that part about attacking it from at least any angle. So often it's hard to start a particular, some projects like right at the natural beginning, but you try to start chiseling away at it where you can, right?
Yep, just chisel away. Just keep going.
A few years ago, you gave training at one of the events that I helped organize, and you gave some awesome training on negotiation. What are some things that you've learned about negotiating with clients that maybe you do differently now than you did when you got started?
So that was a fun workshop, Will. Umbrex workshops are something I really look forward to. So negotiating, what I did there is I created 6 cases, and the client knows something and the consultant knows something. And what I was trying to get people to do, and something that I've learned over the years, is keep asking questions. Don't make the assumption that you know the size of the project, the outcome, who should be involved. Keep asking the questions. And really listen for, why is the client undertaking this project? The other thing about negotiations is, what is it that I'm not willing to let go of? Like, what is super important to me and an absolute must-have? And what's the part that I can give way on? And that's, I don't know that that's unique in negotiation, but I think those are the reminders. I will say, Will, one of my favorite programs on negotiation is something you brought us at Umbrex from your business school professor. Yeah,
that's negotiable. You can find that online, and I will include a link to that in the show notes. It's some online kind of negotiation learning by Professor Daniel Ames at Columbia Business School. So thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah, no, it's a terrific program. I'll tell you something else about negotiation. This makes for a great, this is a bit random, makes for a great workshop exercise. So even though you're not trying to learn negotiation or teach negotiation, maybe you want to get people thinking and reminding them that everyone brings something unique and valuable to a workshop. So, for example, under that negotiable program, there's a little negotiation on a fishing trip, Michael and his 2 friends. So if you do this, you'll find out that Michael wants to go fishing. His friends sort of do, but not really. They approach a fisherman, and the fisherman says this. And so I put people in pairs, and then I say, so what are you going to do? What question will you ask the fisherman? What's happened is, maybe you've got a workshop of 12 people, so you've got 6 pairs. Well, they all come up with a pretty different answer. And now you've heard what everybody else might ask. You get a little bit more information. And then again, in pairs, what would you say? And really the insight people get is, first of all, on negotiations, which is good in a workshop because there's always going to be some trading, if you will, on shared agreement. But it also really reinforces that as a team, it takes all of us, not just one of us, and all of our perspectives to reach a good outcome. So just a different way to use that negotiation course.
Are there any books, MK, that have particularly affected your thinking?
In terms of consulting, two consulting books jump to my mind. One is in the 26th edition, and I think I have edition 2 and 26, which is Flawless Consulting, and it's by Block. And the other one is David Fields. I'm a very big David Fields fan, and if you go to an Umbrex event, you'll often see him there. And I like his Guide to Winning Clients. I also loved his Guide for Executives, Hiring Consultants. And it's not a book, but just a shout out to David Fields, because I encourage a lot of people who want to go into this line of work to sign up for his blog. And he posts about 2 or 3 times a week. By the way, he posted on Fun earlier this week, and it was a good reminder what makes consulting fun. So those are some books. The other blog I like is Susan Drum, also an Umbrex member. She writes under Meritage or Meritage, depending on where you sit in the country, leadership, and Susan's blog is terrific as well.
MK, you have been doing this for a while, and I know a lot of people will, approach you and ask, MK, you've been doing this since, 2002. What advice do you have? So what advice do you have?
3 things. Create a deliberate plan. Don't just let this happen to you. Create a plan of what you're going to offer to what client. Be really clear and very deliberate in what you're going to deliver and to whom and how you're going to deliver it distinctively. 2, craft and control your own story. Someone will always try to explain what you do, but make it easy for them to explain to others what you do so you are in control of your story. And my last thing is bring your whole self to this business. Your whole self. One part of me is I'm a sommelier. I'm a certified wine educator. And I actually bring that to clients. And they talk about why that's of passion and interest to me. They start to understand a little bit more about who I am and what I can bring. Recently, because I have so many global clients, I do wine tastings where we compare old world wine and new world wine, and it's not about good and bad taste. It's about different philosophies. And when you bring your whole self, I think you're bringing an empathetic you, you're bringing a listening you, but you're also leveraging all of the other skills and talents you have. And so I always like to find out what somebody's whole self really is. And I love to ask them how they intend to bring that to their business, to their clients.
I love that. So say a little bit more about these wine tastings. How does that work? You do that with your clients? Would it be kind of at the office, or just how does that happen?
So I do a lot of workshops, as I mentioned, and so we're off-site. And because I have global clients, I usually get the question from the Americans, why are the Europeans doing that? Or the Europeans say, why are the Americans being annoying? And so we're always trying to find new and innovative ways to bridge that cultural gap. And so what I do is I'll create a selection of 8 wines. 4 will be Old World, so they might be from France or Italy or German wines. And then I'll create 4 from the New World, usually American, but sometimes I'll bring in an Argentinian or a New Zealand or something like that. And we talk about how that one grape is really different and how the climate and the terroir has impacted it, but also the philosophy. Here's something quirky. In America, we celebrate winemakers. We love to think about what a grape can be, and we love to celebrate a winemaker and what they can bring. But the Europeans have the opposite approach. They think that the wine should reflect the terroir, the place. And so they celebrate the place and the tradition, whereas we celebrate what it could be. And I think both are great, and they're both wonderful. But it starts to bring new insights at a business level. And this is what I mean by bringing your whole self. But it can be really fun to do some wine tasting with your clients. I would highly recommend it.
I've seen people with kind of a passion for video or for film, really incorporating kind of photos or even video in consulting projects, or people who can sketch or draw, actually doing some art or doing some gallery walks. I know Ravi Rao, who's very strong and kind of an actor and screenwriter as well as a consultant, will sometimes do some role playing or some skits. So that I think it adds a level of authenticity and kind of just bringing your whole person is a way of delivering so much more value than saying, okay, I'm just a brain walking in the room that is sort of has been mass produced by McKinsey, but you're a real human being, right?
I think you're exactly right, Will.
Well, MK, thank you so much for joining. You've been doing this for a long time, and really loved hearing your advice today. And your end-of-year plans, setting goals, proposals. Love to hear how your practice has evolved. It's just fantastic to catch up with you. Thank you so much for joining.
Well, it's been fun. It's really been great. I wish you a wonderful 2019.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Unleashed, the show that explores how to thrive as an independent professional. Unleashed is sponsored by Umbrex, the world's first global community of top-tier independent management consultants. The mission of Umbrex is to create opportunities for independent management consultants to meet, share lessons learned, and collaborate. I'd love to get your feedback and hear any questions that you'd like to see us answer on this show. You can email me at unleashed@umbrex.com. That's UMBREX.com. If you found anything on the show helpful, it would be a real gift if you would let a friend know about the show and take a minute to leave a review on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. And if you subscribe, our show will get delivered to your device every Monday. Our audio engineer is Dave Nelson. Our theme song was composed by Gary Negbauer, and I'm your host, Will Bachman. Thanks for listening.